Once upon a time, in the bustling city of Lagos, there lived a woman named Obiageli. She was the kind of woman who walked with her head held high, her wrapper tied with precision, her blouse starched until it could stand on its own. People called her Madame Success, not because of any business empire, but because she had mastered the art of looking successful. Expensive lace, heavy jewelry that clinked when she moved, and a husband who owned 3 filling stations across Ikeja. But there was one thing Obiageli did not have. One thing that made her wake up at night with tears streaming down her face onto her silk pillowcase. A child. For 12 years of marriage, her womb had remained as silent as a church on Monday morning. She had visited every mountain in Nigeria, from Prayer Mountain in Ibadan to Miracle Mountain in Abeokuta. She had drunk holy water blessed by prophets, rubbed anointing oil on her stomach until her skin shone like polished wood, and fasted until her husband Emeka begged her to eat something, anything, before she collapsed. Nwanyioma, Biko, come and eat, Emeka would plead, his voice heavy with concern and helplessness. God's time is the best. You will carry our child when the time is right. But Obiageli was tired of waiting. She was tired of the whispers at parties, the pitying looks from other women, the way her mother-in-law would sigh dramatically whenever she visited, as if the weight of an empty lineage was crushing her chest. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon at her cousin Adaeze's child dedication ceremony. The church was decorated with blue and white balloons, the air thick with perfume and the smell of jollof rice wafting from the canopy outside. Obiageli sat in the front row, her smile painted on like the makeup on her face, watching as Adaeze presented her third son to the congregation. "This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes," the pastor proclaimed, raising the baby high like Simba in The Lion King. The congregation erupted in applause. Obiageli clapped too, her hands moving mechanically while her heart crumbled like dry bread. After the service, she excused herself to the bathroom. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection, the expensive gele on her head, the gold necklace around her neck, the emptiness in her eyes. She didn't hear the bathroom door open behind her. "Sister Obi, are you all right?" Obiageli turned to see Ngozi, her husband's younger cousin from the village. Ngozi was thin as a broomstick, her clothes faded from too many washes, her slippers held together with prayers and superglue. But there was something in her eyes, a knowing, a recognition of pain that only comes from living it. "Omi, fine. I am fine," Obiageli lied, dabbing at her eyes with tissue paper, careful not to smudge her makeup. Ngozi moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Sister Obi, I know what is paining you. I can see it. But what if I told you there is a solution? A way you can finally have a child to call your own?" Obiageli's heart began to race. "What do you mean?" Ngozi glanced at the bathroom door, ensuring they were alone. "My sister-in-law, the one in the village, she is pregnant. Her husband died last year in a motorcycle accident, and she already has 4 children she can barely feed. She is due in 3 months. Ngozi paused, letting the words sink in. "She has agreed to give away this baby for a price." "Give away?" Obiageli's voice was barely a whisper. "Sister Obi, think about it. You can travel to the village, stay there for the last 3 months, pretend you are pregnant. When she delivers, the baby becomes yours. Nobody will know. Not even Brother Emeka has to know the full truth. You can just tell him you went for special prayers in the village and God finally answered." The devil himself could not have crafted a more perfect temptation. Obiageli's mind raced through the possibilities. She thought about her mother-in-law's face when she would finally announce a pregnancy. She thought about walking into church with a baby on her back, silencing all the whispers. She thought about Emeka's joy, the way his eyes would light up as he held his child for the first time. How much, she heard herself ask. 2 million naira. 1 million now, 1 million after delivery. It was a fortune. But Obiageli had access to money. Emeka trusted her completely with the finances from 2 of his filling stations. She could take the money gradually, little by little, replace it later. "I need to think about it," Obiageli said. but even as the words left her mouth, she knew she had already decided. 3 weeks later, Obiageli sat her husband down in their spacious living room. The ceiling fan whirred above them, creating a breeze that did nothing to cool the heat of her deception. Emeka, I want to go back to the village for some time. There is a powerful woman of God there, Mami Blessing. People say she has the gift of opening wombs. I want to stay there, fast and pray seriously this time. Emeka's face showed concern. For how long? Maybe 3-4 months. I want to focus completely, no distractions. Emeka took her hand. Obiageli, you know I support you in everything. But please don't stress yourself too much. Whether we have children now or later, or even if we decide to adopt, I will always love you. The words stabbed at her conscience like tiny needles. She pushed the guilt down, buried it deep. I know my husband, but let me try this one last time. If it doesn't work, we will explore other options, I promise. He agreed, as she knew he would. Emeka was a good man, perhaps too good for what she was about to do. 2 weeks later, Obiageli packed her bags and traveled to Umuaka village in Imo State. She didn't go to stay with Ngozi's sister-in-law. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she rented a small house on the outskirts of the village, claiming she needed solitude for intense prayer and fasting. The woman with the baby was named Adako. She was 26 years old, her face aged by hardship, her body tired from carrying too many burdens and too many children. When they met for the first time in the rented house, Adako's belly was already swollen like a ripe pawpaw. Madam, thank you, Adako said, her voice breaking. After my husband died, I have been suffering. My children, sometimes they sleep without food. This baby, she touched her stomach, tears flowing freely. I cannot mind another child. It is better the baby goes to someone who can take care of it properly. Obiageli felt a twinge of something. Compassion? Guilt? She pushed it aside and handed Adaku an envelope containing 1 million naira. You are doing the right thing, Obiageli said, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince. The plan was simple but required precise execution. Obiageli would stuff her clothes to appear pregnant, taking photos every few weeks to send to Emeka and post on social media. God is faithful. My testimony is loading, she captioned one photo, her belly prominent beneath a flowing Ankara dress. The comments poured in. Congratulations, ma. We serve a living God. After waiting comes great celebration. Your mockers will soon be put to shame. Each comment felt like another break in the wall she was building between truth and lies. Meanwhile, she monitored Adaku closely. The woman lived in a mud house with a leaking roof, her 4 children running around barefoot, their bellies distended from poor nutrition. Obiageli found herself buying things, bags of rice, yams, clothes for the children, not out of pure generosity, she told herself, but to ensure Adaku stayed healthy for the delivery. Madam, you are like an angel God sent to us, Adaku would say, her gratitude genuine and heartbreaking. The months crawled by like wounded animals. Obiageli called Emeka every evening, describing her pregnancy symptoms, the morning sickness she faked, the cravings she invented, the baby kicks she claimed to feel. I cannot wait to see you and our baby, Emeka would say, his voice thick with emotion. The house is ready. I have painted the nursery yellow because we don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet. Obiageli, I have made you the happiest man alive. Each conversation carved deeper into her soul. Then, on a rainy Tuesday night in October, Adaku went into labor. The village midwife was called, an old woman named Mama Nkechi, who had delivered half the children in Umuaka. She arrived with her basin of hot water, her wrapper tied high above her knees, and her no-nonsense attitude. Push, push, my daughter. This baby is stubborn like his father, Mama Nkechi commanded. Obiageli stood in the corner of the room, her heart hammering in her chest. This was it. After 12 years, she was finally about to become a mother, just not in the way she had imagined in her prayers. At 11:47 p.m., with rain pounding on the zinc roof like angry fists, a baby's cry pierced the night. A boy. Perfect, healthy, with a full head of black hair and lungs strong enough to wake the ancestors. Congratulations, Mama Nkechi said, handing the cleaned and wrapped baby to Obiageli. It is a boy. Obiageli took the child, And in that moment, something shifted inside her. She looked down at his tiny face, his eyes squeezed shut, his fists curled as if ready to fight the world, and she felt love, immediate, overwhelming, undeniable love. "His name is Chukwuemeka," she whispered. "God has done well." Behind her, Adaku lay on the mat, exhausted and bleeding slightly. She didn't ask to hold the baby. She didn't even look at him. She simply turned her face to the wall and wept quietly. Obiageli paid Mama Nkechi generously for her silence, then gave Adaku the remaining 1 million naira. "This is our secret. You must never, never contact me or this child again. Do you understand?" Adaku nodded, clutching the money to her chest. "I understand, madam. May God bless you and the child." 3 days later, Obiageli returned to Lagos with baby Chukwuemeka. She had paid a doctor in the village to create false birth documents, listing her and Emeka as the biological parents. She had covered every track, plugged every hole in her story. When Emeka saw his son for the first time, he wept like a baby himself. He held Chukwuemeka close to his chest, his tears falling on the baby's face. "Thank you, Obiageli. Thank you for giving me this gift. Thank you for your faith and patience. God has blessed us beyond measure." The naming ceremony was the talk of Lagos. They rented the largest event hall in Ikeja, hired a live band, and invited everyone who was anyone. The same people who whispered behind Obiageli's back now praised her faith. The same mother-in-law who sighed dramatically now danced with baby Chukwuemeka strapped to her back. "I knew God would do it. I knew my son's seed could not be wasted. Look at this beautiful boy. He looks exactly like my late father." Emeka's mother declared, and everyone agreed, even though babies generally look like wrinkled old men regardless of genetics. Obiageli smiled through it all, her secret locked away in her heart like a treasure she could never spend. Years passed. Chukwuemeka grew from a baby to a toddler, from a toddler to a bright-eyed boy. He looked nothing like Obiageli or Emeka. His skin was darker, his nose broader, his smile different, but people saw what they wanted to see. Love, Obiageli learnt, could create resemblances where none existed. She was a devoted mother, perhaps overly so. She never let Chukwuemeka out of her sight, never hired a nanny, never sent him to boarding school, even when Emeka suggested it. Every fever sent her into panic. Every scraped knee brought tears to her eyes. She loved him fiercely, protectively, desperately, the way someone loves something they know could be taken away. "You are spoiling this boy," Emeka would complain good-naturedly. "He is 7 years old and still sleeping in our room. My dear, children need independence." "Just a little longer," Obiageli would say. "He is still my baby." But babies grow up, and secrets have a way of growing with them. Chukwuemeka was 9 years old when Ngozi came to visit. She had done well for herself over the years, married a contractor, moved to Abuja. But her eyes still held that same cunning look, that calculating intelligence that Obiageli had once foolishly mistaken for helpfulness. They sat in Obiageli's living room, sipping Chapman and making small talk while Chukwuemeka played video games in his room. "Sister Obi, your son has grown so big," Ngozi said, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "You are very lucky, very, very lucky." "Yes, God has been faithful," Obiageli replied carefully. "You know, Sister Obi, the cost of living in Abuja is very expensive. My husband's business has slowed down. We are managing, but, it is not easy." Obiageli's blood ran cold. She recognized extortion when she heard it, even when it wore a smile. "How much do you need?" she asked directly. Ngozi's smile widened. 5 million naira would help greatly. Just a loan, you understand, between family. 5 million, Obiageli's voice rose, despite her efforts to control it. "Ngozi, I don't have that kind of money just lying around." But Sister Obi, you paid Adaku 2 million 9 years ago. Surely you can find 5 million now, unless you want me to perhaps mention certain things to Brother Emeka, or maybe to the church, or social media. These days, people love such interesting stories on Facebook. The threat hung in the air between them like a bad smell. Obiageli's hands trembled with rage and fear. You are blackmailing me. Blackmail is such an ugly word, Sister Obi. I prefer to call it, helping family help family. Ngozi stood up, smoothing her expensive lace. I will send you my account details. Take your time, but not too much time. You know how loose tongues can be. After Ngozi left, Obiageli sat in her living room for 3 hours, staring at nothing. The walls she had built were crumbling, and she didn't know how to stop the collapse. That night, she couldn't sleep. She watched Emeka snoring peacefully beside her, watched Chukwuemeka sleeping in the small bed they'd put in their room despite his age. Her family, her life, her lie. She paid Ngozi the 5 million naira. But blackmailers, like mosquitoes, always come back for more blood. 6 months later, Ngozi called again. Sister Obi, it's me. Small problem, eh? My husband needs another 3 million for a contract deposit. Emeka paid. A year later, Sister Obi, my sister's daughter needs school fees for university abroad. 2 million would help. Emeka paid. The demands came like clockwork, bleeding her finances drop by drop. She began withdrawing money from Emeka's business accounts, replacing it before he could notice. She sold her gold jewelry piece by piece, claiming she was donating to church projects. She cut back on household expenses, making excuses about saving money. Obiageli, is everything all right? Emeka asked one evening, noticing her distraction. I'm fine, she lied, the words automatic now. Just tired. But she wasn't fine. She was drowning, and the water was rising fast. Then came the day that changed everything. Chukwuemeka was 13 years old, a bright student who loved mathematics and asking difficult questions. He had started noticing things, how his skin was darker than both his parents, how his hair texture was different, how people would sometimes pause before saying he looked like his father. One Saturday afternoon, while Obiageli was at the market, Chukwuemeka was rummaging through his parents' bedroom looking for his birth certificate for a school form. He found it in a metal box under his mother's side of the bed, along with other documents, property papers, insurance policies, and a small envelope marked private. Curiosity, that ancient human weakness, made him open it. Inside was a faded photograph of a thin woman holding a baby. On the back, written in pencil, Adaku and baby, October 2011. His birth month, his birth year. His world tilted on its axis. He had the car horn. His mother was back. He quickly put everything away, his hands shaking, his mind racing with questions he didn't know how to ask. At dinner that night, he watched his parents closely. His mother pushed food around her plate, distracted as usual. His father talked about expanding the business to Port Harcourt. Everything looked normal, felt normal. But normal, Chukwuemeka was learning, was sometimes just a mask we wear to hide the truth. Mommy, tell me about when you were pregnant with me, he said suddenly. Obiageli's fork clattered against her plate. What? The story of when you were pregnant. You never really talk about it. Emeka laughed. Ah, you want to hear how your mother nearly finished all the plantain in Lagos with her cravings. She would eat 4 at once, just like that. Actually, Obiageli said quietly, her voice strange. I craved oranges more. Lots and lots of oranges. No, it was plantain, my dear. You don't remember? You would send me to 4 different markets looking for the ripe ones. No, Emeka, it was oranges. Father and mother locked eyes across the table, confusion giving way to something else, suspicion perhaps, or the first crack in a long-maintained illusion. I'm done eating, Chukwuemeka said, standing up. May I be excused? That night, he couldn't sleep. He waited until he heard his parents' door close, until the house fell into that special silence that comes after midnight. Then he crept back into their room. Obiageli wasn't sleeping either. When she saw his silhouette in the doorway, she knew. Mothers always know. Chukwuemeka? Mummy, I found the photograph. 5 words. That's all it took for 13 years of careful construction to collapse. Obiageli sat up, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. What photograph? The one of Adaku, named Adaku, holding a baby in October 2011. His voice was steady, but she could hear the tremor underneath. Keep your voice down. Your father. Tell me the truth. The shout awoke Emeka. What is going on here? Why is everybody shouting at past 1 a.m.? Father and son both turned to look at Obiageli. The moment of reckoning had arrived on quiet feet in the middle of the night, and there was nowhere left to run. Obiageli spoke first. Her voice broke. Emeka, there is something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you 13 years ago. What followed was the longest night of their lives. Obiageli confessed everything. The deal with Ngozi, the fake pregnancy, Adaku in the village, the false birth documents. She confessed the blackmail payment, the years of fear, the mounting debt. She confessed it all while her husband and son listened in stunned silence. When she finished, the room was so quiet she could hear the clock ticking on the wall, each second hammering another nail into the coffin of her old life. Emeka spoke first, his voice cold and distant as a winter moon. So everything was a lie? No, my love for you, my love for Chukwuemeka, that is real. That has always been real. But he is not my son. He is your son. You raised him. You are the only father he has ever known. And you decided this for me? You took away my choice? You let me believe. His voice cracked. I thanked God every day for answering our prayers, and it was a transaction. Money for a baby like buying a bag of rice? Who is Adaku? Chukwuemeka, who had been silent through her mother's confession, finally spoke. Is she my real mother? Obiageli reached for him, but he stepped back. The rejection cut deeper than any knife. Yes, she whispered, but I am your mother too. I have loved you from the moment I held you. You have lied to me every single day of my life. His voice was matter of fact, which somehow hurt more than anger would have. Everything you told me about being special, about being prayed for, about God answering prayers, it was all lies. It wasn't. I was bought like a market transaction. Chukwuemeka, please, is that even my real name? The question hung in the air, unanswered, because Obiageli didn't know. She had named him without asking what Adaku had wanted to call him. She had taken everything, his identity, his history, his truth, and replaced it with her carefully constructed fiction. Emeka stood up, his movements mechanical. I need to go out. I need to think. Emeka, please, it's 2 a.m. Did you think about me when you made this decision? Did you think about him? He pointed at Chukwuemeka. Or did you only think about yourself, about your reputation, about silencing the whispers? The truth in his words left no room for defense. He left. The sound of his car starting, driving away, echoed through the house like a funeral dirge. Mother and son stood in the living room, 3 feet and a lifetime of lies between them. I want to meet her, Chukwuemeka said, finally. Adaku, the woman who gave birth to me. I don't know if that's a good idea. It's not your decision anymore. You lost the right to make decisions for me the day you bought me. The words hit like physical blows. Obiageli sank onto the couch, her legs unable to hold her up any longer. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I will find her. Finding Adaku wasn't difficult. She was still in Umuaka village, still poor, still struggling. When Obiageli called Ngozi to get the contact information, Ngozi demanded another 2 million naira for the number. You are destroying me piece by piece, Obiageli said. No, Sister Obi, you destroyed yourself the day you thought you could buy happiness. Obiageli paid the money. At this point, she would pay anything, give anything, do anything to fix what she had broken. The journey to the village took 5 hours. Emeka, who had returned home after 3 days of sleeping in his office, drove them in silence. Chukwuemeka sat in the back, staring out the window, looking for clues to who he really was in the landscape rolling by. Adaku's compound was even more impoverished than Obiageli remembered. The same mud house, though older now, the same leaking roof, patched with plastic sheets and prayers. 4 children, teenagers now, sat outside, their eyes widening when the expensive SUV pulled up. Adaku emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her wrapper. She was 40 now, but looked 60. Life had not been kind to her. Her eyes went immediately to Chukwemeka, and something passed across her face. Recognition, perhaps, or regret, or the ghost of a long-buried love. "Madam," she said to Obiageli, her voice weary, "why have you come?" "He knows," Obiageli said simply. "He wants to meet you." Chukwemeka stepped forward. "Are you Adaku?" "Yes," her voice was barely a whisper. "Did you give birth to me?" Tears began streaming down Adaku's face, cutting rivers through the dust on her cheeks. "Yes, I am sorry. I am so, so sorry." "Why did you give me away?" It was the question at the heart of everything, the wound at the center of the story. Adaku gestured to her other children, to the poverty surrounding them like an invisible cage. "Look around you. Look at how we live. After my husband died, I could not feed the children I already had. When Madame offered me money, I thought you would have a better life, education, food, opportunity, everything I could not give you. You sold me. I gave you a chance," her voice broke. "I gave you life twice. Once when I birthed you, once when I let you go to a better place. Do you think it was easy? Do you think I don't think about you every single day? I see your face in my dreams. I wake up crying for the baby I held for only 3 days." Chukwemeka stood frozen, processing emotions he didn't have names for yet. Emeka, who had been silent until now, spoke. "Adaku, I need to know, who is the father?" "My husband, Ikenna Okafor. He died in an accident before I even knew I was pregnant." "So this boy," Emeka looked at Chukwemeka and his voice softened despite himself, "is not my blood son?" "No," Adaku confirmed. "But blood is not everything. Did you not raise him? Did you not love him? Did you not sit up with him when he had fever? Celebrate when he won prizes at school? Pray for him every night? That is fatherhood, not just blood." The words hung in the humid village air. One of Adaku's other children, a girl about 16, stood up. "Are you our brother?" Chukwemeka turned to look at her, this stranger who shared his DNA. "I don't know what I am." The girl came closer. "Your name is Chukwemeka?" He nodded. "Our father's name was Ikenna Chukwemeka Okafor. Mama wanted to name you after him, but she never got the chance." History and identity swirled around them like dust devils on a hot day. They stayed in the village for 3 days. Chukwemeka met his half-siblings, heard stories about the father he never knew, and began to piece together a new understanding of who he was. He learned that he had his father's nose, his mother's stubbornness, and a family history that had nothing to do with filling stations and Lagos wealth. Obiageli watched from the sidelines, no longer the center of the story, no longer in control. She saw Chukwemeka laughing with his biological siblings, helping them fetch water, eating gari and soup from the same bowl like he'd been doing it all his life. On the last evening, Adaku approached Obiageli where she sat under a guava tree, mosquitoes buzzing around them in the fading light. "Madam, I want to say thank you." Obiageli looked up in surprise. "Thank you? For what? For ruining everyone's lives?" Adaku sat down beside her. "For loving him. I can see it. The way you look at him, the way you hurt for him. You may have lied about how he came to you, but you did not lie about your love. I see it clearly. He hates me now. No, he is confused, hurt, angry, but he doesn't hate you. Children don't hate people who love them. They hate people who don't care." Adaku plucked a blade of grass, twisted it between her fingers. "I gave him life and gave him away. You took him and gave him love. Both of us did what we thought was best with the circumstances we had. Both of us are his mothers. I wish I had done things differently. So do I, but we cannot unmake the past. We can only try to do better in the future." They sat in silence, 2 women bound by a single child and 1,000 regrets. When they returned to Lagos, nothing was resolved, but everything was different. Emeka moved into the guest room. Chukwemeka grew quiet, withdrawn, spending hours alone in his room. The house that had once been filled with laughter now echoed with the sound of people carefully avoiding each other. Obiageli went to see her pastor, a wise old man who had counseled hundreds of couples through crises. "Pastor, I have destroyed my family with my lies. What do I do?" The pastor was quiet for a long time, then said, Obiageli, you tried to manufacture a blessing instead of waiting for God to provide one. You saw a closed door, and instead of trusting that God would open it in His time, you broke the hinges. Now you must face the consequences, but also remember, our God is a redeemer. He specializes in making beauty from ashes. Your part is genuine repentance, honesty, and patience. What if my husband never forgives me? What if my son never trusts me again? Then you accept it. Real repentance means accepting the consequences of our actions without demanding forgiveness. You work on yourself, you demonstrate change through action, and you give them space to heal. The rest is up to them and God. It was not the comforting answer she wanted, but it was the truthful one she needed. Weeks became months. Slowly, painfully, they began the hard work of rebuilding what was destroyed. Family therapy, individual counseling, honest conversations that lasted till dawn. Emeka struggled the most. Every time I look at him, I see the lie, and then I feel guilty because he doesn't deserve my resentment. None of this is his fault. But I love him, Emeka continued, tears streaming down his face. I love him so much, and I hate that I'm questioning whether that love is real or just based on a falsehood. The therapist, Dr. Chidima, was gentle but firm. Mr. Emeka, did you love him yesterday? Yes. Did you love him last week, last month, last year? Yes, yes, yes. Then that love is real. It doesn't become false because you learned new information. You are grieving the biological child you thought you had, and that's valid. But the child you actually raised, the one you've loved for 13 years, he's real. Your love is real. Your fatherhood is real. Slowly, Emeka began to separate the betrayal he felt from Obiakeni from the love he felt for Chukwuemeka. They were not the same thing, even though they got tangled together in his heart. Chukwuemeka had his own journey. He started visiting Adaku every holiday, getting to know his biological family. But he also came to realize that family wasn't always blood. It was the man who taught him to ride a bicycle, who checked his homework every night, who showed up to every school program even when he was tired. Dad, Chukwuemeka said one evening, I've been thinking. Adaku gave birth to me, but you raised me. Biology is what people do once. Parenting is what you do every day. You're my dad. Maybe not by blood, but by choice. And isn't choice more meaningful than accident? Emeka pulled him into a hug and sobbed like a baby. You will always be my son. Always. Obiageli's redemption was longer, harder. Trust once broken doesn't heal overnight. She had to prove herself day after day, through honesty, through therapy, through facing Ngozi in court when she finally decided to fight back against the blackmail. Ngozi was arrested for extortion. The trial made the news. The secrets Obiageli had protected for so long became public knowledge. Church members gossiped, neighbors pointed, social media had a field day. Lagos Big Madam's baby buying scandal exposed. But something unexpected happened. In the court, during her testimony, Obiageli told the full truth, not just about buying Chukwuemeka, but about the crushing pressure she felt to have children, about the depression she hid behind expensive clothes, about a society that measured a woman's worth by her womb. I was wrong, she said, facing the courtroom. What I did was wrong. But I want people to understand the desperation that leads women to make such choices. We need to talk about infertility without shame. We need to support couples struggling with childlessness instead of mocking them. We need to stop making women feel that their only value is in producing children. Her words resonated. Women from all over Nigeria reached out to her, hundreds of them, sharing their own stories of infertility, failed IVF attempts, adoption struggles, and the cruel comments they endured from family and society. Obiageli started a foundation, the Adaku Chukwuemeka Foundation, dedicated to supporting women facing infertility and children in situations like Adaku's, poor single mothers who needed help, not judgment. "I'm not trying to erase my sins with charity," she told a journalist. "I'm trying to prevent other women from making my mistakes and other children from suffering because of poverty and desperation." Adaku became involved in the foundation, speaking at events about the impossible choices poor mothers face. With the foundation's help, her other children went to school, her leaking roof was fixed, she started a small business selling foodstuffs in the market. The case against Ngozi ended with a conviction. She was sentenced to 5 years for extortion. As she was led away from court, she screamed at Obiageli, "You think you've won? You think your money and your foundation makes you better than me? You are still a fraud, a liar." Obiageli watched her go, feeling not triumph but sadness. She said to Emeka, "We were all looking for shortcuts to happiness. She wanted money without work. I wanted motherhood without waiting. We both learned that shortcuts always have a cost." 3 years after the truth came out, the family gathered for Chukwuemeka's 16th birthday. It was a small celebration, just immediate family, including Adaku and her children who had traveled from the village. Chukwuemeka stood to give a speech, his voice steady and strong. "I have two mothers. One gave me life, the other gave me a life. For a long time, I was angry about the circumstances of my birth, about the lies, about being bought like a commodity. But I've learned that life is more complicated than fairy tales make it seem." Adaku made an impossible choice out of love. She wanted me to have opportunities she couldn't provide. Obiageli made a wrong choice out of desperation. She wanted a child so badly she stopped caring how she got one. Both of them hurt me with their choices. Both of them also loved me. "And Dad," he looked at Emeka, "you had no choice at all. You were deceived, but you also chose every day after learning the truth to still be my father. That's the choice that means the most to me. I've learned that family is not always simple. It's not always biological. It's not always honest from the beginning. But if people are willing to fight for it, to walk through pain, to forgive without forgetting, then family can be rebuilt, maybe even stronger than before, because it's based on conscious choice rather than automatic obligation." I am Chukwuemeka Okafor Emeka. I carry names from both fathers. I have love from both mothers. I am not defined by how I came into this family, but by how we choose to be family now. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Obiageli stood and walked to Adaku. For a moment, the two women looked at each other across the divide of years and secrets and shared love for one boy. Then Obiageli did something surprising. She bowed her head in the traditional Igbo sign of respect. "Ene, thank you. Thank you for the gift of your son. I promise to continue being worthy of the trust you placed in me all those years ago." Adako pulled her up and embraced her. "We are both his mothers. Let us both be worthy of him." 5 years later, Chukwuemeka graduated top of his class at University of Lagos studying social work. His thesis was on child trafficking and the exploitation of poverty in Nigeria. He dedicated it to "my two mothers and one father who taught me that love is more complicated than biology." Obiageli and Emeka renewed their vows on their 25th wedding anniversary. The ceremony was simple, honest, stripped of pretense. Their vows included promises they'd failed before: to be truthful even when truth is painful, to trust even when trust has been broken, to choose each other even when choice is difficult. The Adaku Chukwuemeka Foundation grew to help over 5,000 families. It provided fertility support, adoption counseling, and financial assistance to single mothers. Adaku became its operations director. Her life transformed from struggling in the village to advocating on national television. One evening, as Obiageli sorted through old photos for a foundation event, she found the picture that started everything, Adaku holding baby Chukwuemeka. She stared at it for a long time, thinking about the journey from that moment to this one. Emeka came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about how God answers prayers in the most unexpected ways. I prayed for a child, He gave me one, just not the way I expected. I prayed for a family, He gave me one, but first He had to break me down and rebuild me." "Do you regret it, all of it?" She thought carefully before answering. "I regret the lies. I regret the pain I caused. I regret making decisions out of desperation instead of faith. But I cannot regret Chukwuemeka. He was brought to us wrongly, but he has become the right thing in our lives." "That's the mystery of redemption," Emeka said. "God doesn't approve of our wrong methods, but He still manages to create something beautiful from them. Not because the methods were right, but because His grace is greater than our mistakes." They stood together in comfortable silence, looking at the photo of a thin woman and a baby who had brought them all to this place. A place of hard-won forgiveness, complicated love, and the understanding that family is not always what we plan, but what we choose to build day after difficult day. Moral lessons of this story. Desperate situations lead to desperate measures, but wrong still is wrong. Obiageli's infertility struggle was real and painful, but buying a child was still unethical. Our pain doesn't justify unethical actions. Secrets always come out. What is done in darkness eventually comes to light. The truth has a way of emerging, often at the worst possible time. Blackmailers never stop. Once you give in to blackmail, you become an endless source of money. Ogozi's greed had no limit because blackmail is built on exploitation. Love is action, not just biology. Real fatherhood is shown in daily choices. Emeka's struggle reminds us that family is built through commitment, not just blood. Society's pressure on women must change. The stigma around infertility pushes women to desperate measures. We must create supportive communities that don't measure women solely by motherhood. Poverty should not force impossible choices. Adaku shouldn't have had to choose between feeding her children and keeping her baby. This shows our failure as a society. Redemption is possible, but it requires honesty. Obiageli's path to redemption started with confessing the full truth and accepting the consequences. Real change requires facing our sins. Children deserve the truth. Chukwuemeka had a right to know his origins. His identity was stolen from him, and recovering it was part of his healing. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting.